Okay, so today we shall discuss about the scene-wise outline of the story. So let's start from scene one. In scene one, we see, as I have already actually pointed out several times, that Blanche is arriving from Mississippi, and she is arriving at Elysian Field in New Orleans, where her sister Stella lives with her husband Stanley. The two sisters meet for the first time and they were very excited. They embrace each other and exchange some good words. After this conversation, immediately Blanche informs Stella about the loss of Belle Reve. Of course, Stella was taken aback, but she did not seem to be much concerned about this loss. Rather, she was interested to talk about her husband, Stanley. Very soon, Stanley also appears, and in their first meeting between Stanley and Blanche, of course, they were not really very happy to meet each other. Blanche realized that, of course, this is a very rough and brutish kind of guy. Another important thing in scene one is that Blanche, in the very beginning, had complained about the very squalor and desolate sort of atmosphere of the house. It was just a two-room flat, and both two rooms were even not separated by a door. It was just there was just a curtain in between. So that was all about scene one. In the next scene, we find first of all that Stella informs her husband Stanley about the loss of Belle Reve, but Stanley does not really believe in this story. He takes it as a story because he had a hope that he will get some share of the property, or at least share of some money of the property at Belle Reve, because he was the son-in-law of the Belle Reve house of the fathers of parents of um, Stanley and Blanche, and there was a law which was called uh, Louisiana state law or Louisiana property law, according to which the son-in-law was a legal heir to the property of his in-laws. But this dream, this wish was literally shattered after having the news that it was lost. So Stanley, in spite of Stella's repeated request not to harangue Blanche, confronts Blanche and seeks for the paper if it is lost or it is sold out. Of course, Blanche produces the papers, and perhaps the papers were quite satisfactory because further Stanley did not talk about this property at Belle Reve. One important information about we get from this scene is that Stella was pregnant and she was expecting actually. So that's all about scene 2. In scene 3, we find it was a very famous scene, and it is called the poker night scene. Scene 3 and scene 4 together, this was the poker night scene. And if you can remember, I told you that when Tennessee Williams had conceived the idea of writing this play for the first time, then he gave the play the title The Poker Night, because he perhaps had thought to make it the central episode of the play. But later on he changed the title and made it A Street Car Named Desire. How is this scene important? The first thing for which this scene is important is because it introduces the character Mitch, Harold Mitchell or Mitch. And it tells us about how Mitch and Blanche, they came to see each other and fall for each other because they got interested in each other. So it is important in that respect because Blanche, who had been in search of security in her life, of course found some rays of hope after meeting Mitch. The second thing for which this scene is again important is that it paves the way. I mean to say, it paves the road for the rapid development and progress of the play itself. Here we see that four men are playing poker. Poker is a game of cards. It's a gambling game actually. Four men were, of course, Stanley and three of his friends, Steve, Pablo, and Mitch. They were playing poker. Stella and Blanche, they were out for some time to watch a show, a drama show. After that, they returned back, and then Mitch and Blanche met for the first time. Blanche started inquiring about Mitch, how the guy is, because uh, immediately after meeting Mitch, she felt interested in that guy, and with the very desire, as I mentioned it is what is called eros, okay, with the very desire to settle her life with this guy called Mitch. She was happy, she was jubilant after the show and also after meeting Mitch, and so she turned on the radio. But Stanley got outraged, and he grabbed the radio and just hurled it outside the window. When Stella protests against this rude behavior of Stanley, then Stanley, again more outraged at Stella's protest, starts beating Stella. It's a violence, the domestic violence that Tennessee Williams shows in the play. And as it is presented, it was quite common in the American societies at the time, especially in the American South. So this scene of domestic violence is there, and Blanche bears the witness to this domestic violence. Blanche, quite unaware of such, in fact, situations, turbulence at domestic front, got to be much agitated. She felt that her sister is in a kind of course, an unbearable situation from where she has to be rescued, from where she has to be saved. So that is all about scene 3. In the next scene, we'll find that Blanche, this scene is very important because for the first time this shows us that Blanche is a pretentious lady, and she pretends to in fact show off her highborn status, and that she has a detestation and um, uh, dislike for the squalor and low life atmosphere in that two-room flat of Stanley and Stella. So here actually what happens, Stella is seen writing a letter to one named Shep Huntley. I talked about Shep Huntley last day, and I mentioned that Shep Huntley is an absent character. Shep Huntley is given the impression as he is absent character, so we do not come to know about the reality. So, who Shep Huntley is, or whether he was really the shooter of Blanche. But Blanche claims that Shep Huntley was an admirer and a shooter of Blanche. So they were supposed to be married, but somehow they didn't get married later on. So the scene is Blanche is writing a letter to Shep Huntley so that Shep Huntley sends her some money in order to rescue her sister, and with that money what she would do, she also in fact proposes to Blanche, Blanche proposes to Stella that they will together escape this atmosphere, escape this man, brutish man, uh, Stanley, and settle elsewhere, and purchase a shop, and they will live life in that way. But Stella's reaction was quite, in fact, peculiar. Peculiar in the sense she was laughing at the way Blanche was pretending, and Blanche was preparing basically for a kind of escape from this man Stanley. Because Stella was quite happy. She knew it. Stella was quite happy with this man Stanley, and she never thought of escaping this man. And literally, she says that she loved this brutish manner, this brutish character of her husband Stanley. So, of course, Blanche was quite upset. But Blanche still continues to convince her sister Stella, so that she gets convinced and she agrees to escape from this home and to leave that man Stanley. What happens most dramatic about this scene is that Stanley was overhearing this last part of their conversation. And of course, where Blanche was talking derogatory about Stanley, he could not really endure such derogatory remarks about Blanche. So, of course, he prepares to defend himself in the subsequent scenes. So, we move here to scene 5. In scene 5, as I told it that Stanley prepares to defend himself, and to get the revenge. Okay, keep it in mind that he will take a revenge on Blanche in the in a most, in fact, vicious way in scene 10. I will talk about it when I come to scene 10. So in scene 5, first of all, we see that Stanley is confronting Blanche. And listen to it carefully. He says that, Blanche, I have come to know about your past, and about your ignoble past, about your sordid history, offensive history. And he mentions about his friend, Stanley mentions about his friend Shaw, S-H-A-W, Shaw, who was a fellow worker in that same automotive company where Stanley also works. He informs that Shaw is a guy who frequently visits Laurel, Mississippi, where Belle Reve was there. And this man, this guy, Shaw, has collected so much information about Blanche, and directly asks Blanche whether she knows a hotel named Hotel Flamingo. For your information, this was the hotel where Blanche spent nights after nights with strangers and with the young military boys from the nearby camp. After listening to this, Blanche was quite shaken and shocked, because she is now quite sure that Stanley has come to know so much about her sordid, ignoble, vicious past, which she had been trying to hide, to conceal, and to not to divulge it to anybody else. She was shocked. She was not really prepared for this unwanted situation, and she got to be nervous. She got to be nervous, shocked and shaken. Why? Because she has just started cherishing her desire to mix and match with Mitch, and if possible probably to marry him and settle up in life. And there is a possibility of that dream to be shattered. So this scene is very much vital, and we'll find after this scene, from scene 6 onward, actually, the neurotic features of Blanche got to be aggravated. She got to be more neurotic, and there has been a number of moments where she actually reveals that she is no longer in her true self. Rather, she was getting, in fact, getting into the lunacy, or she was at the threshold of lunacy. So we next move to scene 6. I'm sorry. So we next move to scene 6. The scene 6 starts with Blanche and Mitch coming back home at Kowalski home after a dating. So they went out in a dating, but they returned quite early. So it gives the impression to the readers or to the audience that the dating was not really very much a successful one. But once they are back home, at Kowalski home or at Stella's home, they got to be engaged in some intimate conversations. I say it intimate because finally they embrace each other and they really express their mutual love for each other. So it was heartwarming for the audience, who audience and the readers who sympathized with Blanche. In this very scene itself, we also find that when the conversation grew to be quite intimate between the two, Blanche reveals one side of her past, or one uh, information about her past. She tells Mitch about her former husband or her shooter, about Alan Gray, who was a poet, and he was just 17-year old when they got married. Blanche was then 16 year. But it was discovered, as Blanche reports, that he was a homosexual. And after this discovery of Alan's homosexuality by Blanche, Alan committed suicide. I cannot really explain the very tone of pathos in this scene if I do not read out the lines from the text. So I will urge you to actually read the text, okay, so that you get into the meaning, okay, because it is a very emotional scene between Mitch and Blanche. And after this, she breaks down, literally breaks down, and Mitch, um, in fact, takes her in his bosom and embraces her tightly. And Blanche is so happy. She was about to utter few words of perhaps thanks, but she could not utter because her voice got choked. Okay, because of her excessive happiness, and it actually uh, promised to have registered their mutual love and their relationship and their prospective marriage as well. But things do not happen as is as was supposed to happen. So we move to the next scene. In this scene 7, we see there is a preparation for a birthday celebration. It was the birthday of Blanche, so Stella was preparing for the celebration. Here Stanley enters and informs Stella that he has come to know more about Blanche's past. So this is how actually Tennessee Williams is also giving us the informations bit by bit, okay, and this helps us to, in fact, focus on the character of Blanche in an exponentially progressive way. Here, Stanley tells that what Blanche says, that she has taken a leave from the school where she was working, But actually, the fact is, she has been expelled out of that school because of her sexual profligacy and her involvement, sexual involvement, promiscuous involvement with a schoolboy of around 16 or 17 years of age. And the principal of the school, in fact, fired Blanche. But Blanche told both Stella and Stanley that she has taken a leave for a few days from the school and she might return back to the school. Another thing is that Stanley informs his wife Stella that he cannot endure the presence of Blanche in his home. So he has brought a bus ticket back to Laurel. This is what happening till scene 7, and I will stop here today. I will discuss next scenes in my next lecture. Thank you.